Hello everyone, and I'm going to do a Tau review today. Very late. I know the book came out more than a couple weeks ago, but you guys have been asking for it in droves, spamming other videos with requests for a Tau Codex review. So, it came down to whether or not I did this or not. It came down to whether I felt I was experienced enough to review a Tau Codex. Because I've played 0 games in 7th edition with it. I've played against the Index Tau a handful of times, and I've played with this new Tau Codex for 3 or 4 battle reports. So, just take everything I say to come from an experienced Warhammer 40k player, but an inexperienced Tau player. For whatever weight that carries, if anything at all. So, I just remember going through this book, my first read-through, it felt perfectly okay, perfectly good. Nothing stood out as that's amazing, and nothing's like, ooh, that's really bad. That's always a good sign. I think internal balance in this book is pretty decent, as far as internal balance goes. There is a whole thing about crisis suits where reading the book for the first time, I had one opinion. I'll get to it in more depth when I get to the crisis suits. But I had one opinion reading the book and then playing a few games with them, and my opinion has completely 100% did a 180. So this book, pretty good. Is it the auto win? Is Tau the auto win they were in 7th? Is they the cheese fest annoying army that they were in 7th? No, and that's good. After playing a few games with this book, I decided that I could buy a Tau army now because it's not. Nobody's gonna really complain that, oh, I'm playing against Tau. That's so boring. They can be competitive, but they don't seem over the top, which is where you want an army, right? Because, I mean, look, if you follow my mini wargaming career, I've only been playing Warhammer 40k for 4 years-ish. I started with Necrons and then moved to Eldar. At the time, they were by far and away the 2 most overpowered armies. And I was inexperienced and did not know that. I mean, people told me. But it took me a while to really understand that. And once you understand playing a significantly overpowered army, and hold on, I'll disqualify something. Necrons were overpowered at the beginning of 7th. By the end of 7th, they were nothing. But they were for a long while. Because they were one of the first Codex in the edition. But, you know, I'm going off on a tangent on something else. So, yeah, you want an army that, I'm saying for me, you want an army that is playable. You can play up, you can play down. If you want to take it to a local tournament, you can. If you want to play with just somebody who never played the game before, you want to teach a game, you can. If you can do all that with one book, that's a solid army. And I think that's what we have here. Now, there is definitely talk that if you're going up against, say, Raven Guard, Eltiok, or Styges 8, you're probably gonna have some trouble. Probably gonna have a lot of trouble with this, with playing this Tau. Let's not, for the purpose of discussion in the comments, not that it's not a valid point, but let's try to avoid comparing this to armies with a -1 to hit modifier. Because if those armies don't exist, if that particular chapter tactic, Forge World or Craft World didn't have that rule, this army is considered stronger. I think those 3 particular sub-factions from the faction, though that you're going to see them a lot in high competitive, sorry, my chair is very squeaky, you're going to see those armies a lot in very competitive scenes. Well, not so much Raven Guard, but you could. But, yes, you can see them in competitive scenes. It is a valid factor, but let's not only look at that, because I think a majority of you would agree that those particular faction rules, I got paid all over my finger, sorry. Those particular faction rules was probably a mistake. And I don't think you're gonna see them pop one up anymore. Like what's left to come up for Codex? So at this point, we're waiting on Orcs and Space Wolves and I think Gene Stealers. I just don't foresee any of them having a -1 to hit faction in their book. I think Games Workshop has moved on from that. Okay, so let's just get into how the book plays. It's a shooting army. It's a shooting army in a game where shooting is a big deal. You have mobility, and mobility is a big deal in this game, but you're not playing the psychic phase, and you're not playing the assault phase. So, you know, yeah, your movement phase, you got your psychic phase, you got your shooting phase, you got your assault phase, well, your charge phase. But like, there's 4 main sections of the game for, you know, messing with your opponent or doing game work, as it were. You're only playing shooting and movement. I mean, there are a few artifacts for some characters with close combat abilities, but they're like, if you're talking from the min-max point of view, and if I'm gonna review a book, that's the point of view I'm gonna take it from. There's not a really good argument. Now I know somebody will comment, well, of course I've brought the honor or whatever, or the fusion blades or whatever, and I've done amazing things. Yes, anecdotally, can't speak. It's late. Yes, there are instances of, we've all had instances where things have done well, but that's not the norm. That's not the particular, when you play a Tau army, you maximize your shooting phase. And that's the point of view I'm going to come at as I go through this book. Not that that's the only way or the right way to play, but that tends to be the most efficient way to play if you're trying to kill your opponent. So I'm going to come at it from that point of view. Now, another thing that was new in this book that is similar in the Jafari book, which I'm actually going to do a review. The video's up right now. I'm putting them both at the same time. I'm going to do that right after I do this one. There's a new thing in this book about Tau commanders. And so there's if you're a Tau player, you know what I'm talking about. If you're new to Tau and you're just watching a video for the sake of watching a video, Tau commanders are a pretty good character. And there were some lists popping up where people were bringing, I think, 9 of them. 9 of these particular characters. And they did very well. And in response to that, they got limited to 1 per detachment. You get 3 detachments in your typical match play list, up to 3. So you're not having any more than 3 commanders in the list anymore. Which, I understand the frustration of the 9 commander and drone list, which is probably no fun for anyone. I find it funny that, okay, for example, remember when the big thing was Malefic Lords? And people brought tons of them. Well, they changed Might, and then they changed the price of the Malefic Lord. They didn't touch the Tau Commander points. He was too efficient. So what I'm trying to say is, I find it confusing that they decided to limit commanders by detachment instead of adjusting their rules or their point cost, which was the original thing I think Games Workshop said they were going to do with things that they found to be too efficient on the tabletop. So limiting them, interesting. Though it works as a fix. It's just an interesting way of handling it. And we're seeing a lot of fixes through FAQs or erratas quite rapidly after books come out in response to the outcry of the community, which I think is not necessarily a great idea. We shouldn't be swinging rapidly to respond to every little problem immediately. It's a game. Things are going to be broken. Things are going to be bad. I'm not a Tau player. I would have accepted them for the short term until it got sorted out. But that being said, if you've been a 4K player for a number of years, and you can remember just like 3 years ago when you had rules that didn't make sense, or just a serious, how does this interaction work, or what happens in this situation, and you never got FAQs. You had no answer. You kind of like major tournaments would end up making the final call. That was worse. So don't get me wrong. I'm sidetracking a lot here. The FAQs we get now are great. We're spoiled with a company that is taking care of the community as best they can, and as rapidly as they've been doing it. So it is definitely better than what was before, but we can always find a way to criticize something. Because that's what we do as humans, or that's what Steve does, is complain. But don't get me wrong, I love it. It's all good. It's all good. So, forces of the Tau Empire. Tau troops are adeptus scared. That's expected. I'm gonna mix things because I'm not super familiar with Tau, like I said at the beginning. But I'm gonna hit on the things that I've really noticed or personally played with. So I don't have anything really good to say about any of the special characters, because with the exception of what's his name, Longstrike, I haven't used them, and I've had a number of people send me emails about Dark Strider, I think her name is, saying this is a great model in the book. I'm sure they're right. I'll take a look at that, but I have no personal experience with her, so I don't want to weigh in. But Commanders, let's talk about them right away because they're at the beginning here. Commanders, battle suits, toughness 5. You're gonna get a handful of wounds. You get at least 5 on the cheapest one, 6 on the Cold Star, which is 20-inch move. But the Commander thing, for those who don't know, it's a deep striking. I'm gonna use deep striking as the word. Oh, it's called Mantis Strike. I'll use deep striking for the wider audience. These are characters that can deep strike with toughness 5, 5 wounds, and a 3-up armor save. They move fast. They move 8. And they can have up to 4 weapons or support systems. Support systems are like buffs. What you typically saw was 4 fusion blasters. Now, fusion blasters are 18-inch range melt-a-guns. Again, using the more generic terms. So, for not a lot of points, I can't remember off the top of my head, in the neighborhood of 150, I think a little bit more than that, but in the neighborhood of 150, maybe 180, maybe 130, I can't remember exactly. I could look it right here, but you can buy the book for the points. You got a character that could drop in, fire off 4 melt-a-guns, not in good range because you have to be outside of 9 inches and you have to be in 9 for good range for extra damage, or 2 dice for damage. Pick the highest. But you have 4 shots hitting on 2s, wounding most things that they're targeting on 3s, and doing pretty good damage. And then you couldn't target them back because there's drones and or other suits, protect them because they were characters. So they did very well at just like picking a target and killing it, picking a target and killing it. Which, okay. I mean, every army has models that can just pick a unit and kill it. So if the problem was people were bringing 9 commanders in their army and that's it, why not just make them like 300 points? If they're that good, why not just make their points more? So, I don't know. So, anyways, very good leaders. I've used 2 in every game I've played with fusion blasters. I know my good buddy Colin used to use 1 with fusion blasters and 1 with cyclic ion rakers, I believe they're called, if I got anything right. And there's a few other weapon options that are a decent loadout. But the ethereals and then other named characters, not a lot of experience with. Even the Fireblade, I've used it for 1 game. Not a whole lot of experience personally with them or opinions, but Longstrike I will talk about briefly as well. He is the Tau Sept. Just a tank character that buffs other tanks. If you're playing Tau and you want to bring hammerheads, he is, for lack of a better term, an auto-include. He's good. He hits good. He helps your other tanks hit. No big problem there, but let's try to avoid the characters for a moment. Before I move on to the actual core of the army, which is all the units, let's talk about the Septs. Now, I know I'm late, and opinion may have changed. Online opinion, that is. But when the book was first was talked about in the Warhammer community, and they were showing off the Sept rules. Now, again, Septs are like chapter tactics. It's like the sub-factions within the faction. Everybody was like, Borkan's where it's at. This is the one. Borkan is adds 6 inches to the maximum range of rapid-fire heavy weapons. That's pretty good. And I tried it for, I think, my first game, because the community was like, this is so good. But you realize that, I don't know, it's arguably maybe in my opinion, the least attractive one. It seems to attempt at fixing a problem that Tau don't have, and that's range. Now, don't get me wrong, there are things that you can get rapid fire range with your plasma rifles at 15 inches instead of 12. I've played against a guy. He had, with this sept and a few other, I think it was a pulse accelerator drone, he had his fire warriors. Oh, that's my alarm. His fire warriors having like a 42-inch range on your basic troop choice gun. 42-inch range. That's insane. Yet I charged them all turn one. Like, range wasn't a weakness of the army, and more range is good, but I don't know if you need it. Now Farsight, I know a lot of people like the Commander Farsight. He has his own enclave, his own little sub-faction. It's reroll wound rolls of 1 for mauls with this tenant for shooting attacks against enemies that are within 6 of the firing model. So if you get in real close and start shooting, you reroll 1s to wound. It's very lore appropriate. Like, Farsight was the guy who he made his bones killing orcs. He had a big old sword and chopped them down himself. A commander in a crisis suit with a big old sword. Actually, if someone can comment below, that sword, Dawnstar, am I remembering it correctly? Let's go back to him for a moment. Is his sword one of the 7... Ah, man, I'm blanking hard. The 7 swords that the Inari were trying to track down back in End Times. Is that true? It's called Dawnblade. That's right. So is Dawnblade one of the 7 swords? And if yes, can you point out to where that was talked about? Because I don't know if I'm going crazy and why I think that's the case. So that's the Farsight Enclaves. That's the get up close and fight you with our guns. Though Farsight himself is pretty good at fighting. Forgive me if I am saying this incorrectly. Saucia. Add 1 to leadership characteristic of all mauls with this tenant. In addition, in the shooting phase, you can reroll single failed hit rolls when a unit with this tenant shoots. Now, if you're going to have a detachment of just like broadsides with the rail rifles, hammerheads. A detachment of just hammerheads, this is the one you want. They have a single shotgun, which typically is not great. But rerolling that hit, that's great. I personally won't use it. I don't really like the idea of multiple septs in an army, or high fleets in an army, or chapters in an army, or regiments in an army, though regiments in one army. That one kind of is lore appropriate, isn't it? But yeah, I don't like, all that. Del Neth, a unit with this 10 does not Mantis Strike, move, fall back, charge, pile in. If a maul doesn't move, he gets the benefit of cover. So getting cover out in the open. I don't know personally if that's a great sept for the Tau playstyle. That means you're going to be deploying a lot of your stuff on the table and hopefully not moving it. Where 8th edition is about reinforcements and table control. Jumping on the table and then your movement phase is a big part of the game. So you're not going to see that a whole lot. But there could be a valid reason for using this for some reason. Maybe stealth suits that don't have a spot for cover on the table. But I mean, I don't think this is a particularly attractive sept. Vior Law sept. If a unit with this tenant advances, it treats all rapid fire weapons as armed with assault weapons until the end of the turn. In addition, they don't have the penalty of firing assault when advancing. That's pretty good. There are some armies that would love that one to death. I don't know how important that is for Tau, but with a lot of playing, that one is potentially really good. Now, the one I'm going to last is a Tau sept. To me, this is it. This is the one. This is obviously the one to go with. When a unit with this tenant uses their for the greater good ability, for the greater good, for those who aren't aware, it's the same as before. Other units can overwatch for friendlies being charged within 6 inches, and if they do so, they can't fire overwatch anymore. So there's a restriction to it, but you can really use it to make yourself really hard charge, almost unchargeable. So when a unit firing incident uses their for the greater good ability, or when they fire Overwatch while they are within 6 of a friendly Tau Seb unit, a 5 or 6 is required for successful hit roll, irrespective of the model's ballistic skill or any modifiers. I want to just reread that. I think I may have. Okay, so I had a brain fart for a second. I thought I was doing it wrong. So basically, you Overwatch on 5 and 6s. It's amazing. The fact that that was a little overlooked at first, as it is whatever. What's the biggest weakness of the Tau? Getting charged. The amount of firepower you can throw down with this to me is so obviously the right one. Borkan, you don't need the range. You could use it, sure, but you don't need it. The one weakness you have, the real big weakness you have with Tau is if you get caught in combat, like you're getting munched up. You have weapon skill 5 on most Tau things. The Tau Sept is, in my opinion, is just so good, so good. Another mechanic for Tau is the marker light system. A lot of drones or other vehicles, fireblades, can fire off of marker lights, a heavy weapon that when you hit a target, you put a marker on them, a marker light marker. If you have 1 on a target, anybody else who fires that target can reroll 1s to hit. The chart after that isn't all spectacular. I kind of feel like it's a little bit boring. Try to pull it up. I think I remember most of it offhand anyway. But the marker lights chart could have been a little better. If you have 2 marker lights on something, you can fire your destroyer and seeker missiles on the model's ballistic skill, which is usually a 4+. Instead of hitting on 6s, those are 2 missiles that can be bought for a lot of vehicles that only hit on 6s, unless they're being fired with marker lights. That just seems to be a way of using. It seems almost a little lazy. Like it was a difference. It was a way of using. How do I word this properly? In 7th edition, firing off these missiles with marker lights was a thing, and now they just kind of like wedged it into 8th edition. Could have been someone else. You have 3 marker lights. The unit with the marker lights on them, when you fire them, they're not going to get any cover. Well, cover is garbage in 8th edition. It's garbage. Terrain rules are terrible in 8th edition. 8th edition is great. I love 8th edition. The terrain rules are terrible. So I don't care about that one. It does come up. People put a lot of rules on the table just for cover, but whatever. But I mean, yeah, that one should be on the table, so I'm not complaining about that. Number 4 is pretty good. If you fire that unit, you don't have the penalty for firing, for moving and firing heavy. That's pretty good. I like that one. And if you get 5 on a target, you're +1 to hit. The typical blitz skill of a Tau army is 4 up. So if you get 5 on something, but I mean, if you're putting 5 marker lights on a target, you're really working for it. Like you're putting a lot of points into marker drones. I would think would be the most of them. But you can't mark everything. And yeah. It works, it's good. It's not useless, but I find more often than not you get 1 marker on something and that's it. You move on to the next thing. You'd rather just reroll 1s than to get try to get 5 on a target and get +1 to hit. Now there is a stratagem for 1 command point that adds D3 marker lights after you mark something. But yeah, it works. A little on the boring side, but it works. One more thing. I constantly get comments of people saying, roll your marker lights 1 at a time. Because after the first one hits, you reroll the ones for the next ones. But people are not realizing that sometimes you only are ever going for 1. I might fire 5 marker lights. I know they're not all going to hit. I'm just looking for that 1 marker light. And I find that most of the time you're probably going to be doing that. Again, not super experienced. You could be wrong. You may do differently. But most of the time I think you're just going for the 1 marker light. Drones had a big change that I noticed that I felt was kind of like, I don't know about the drone change or the point cost change, I should say. First of all, when a Tau model is hit by an attack, they can send the wound off to a drone. In the index, it was automatically just like, goes to the drone. You hit me the last cannon, go to the drone. Now it's on a 2+. I like that. I don't like things that are automatic. So on 2+, you can go to a drone within 3 inches of you. I like that change. But the point cost for gun drones, I think they were 8 points in the index, and the shield and marker drones were 10 points. And now in this book, the gun drones are 12 points, and the shield and marker stayed at 10. Games Workshop, you priced gun drones off out of the game. Like, why would you ever take a gun drone now? I mean, the marker drone, it's marker drones all the way. Now, shield drones are pretty good because when you send when you send a hit off to a drone, no, it's a wound because you have to wound first. When you send a wound off to a drone, they take 1 mortal wound instead of the damage of the weapon. And shield drones ignore mortal wounds in a 5+, so they might survive. But it seems that marker drones are the way to go. Another really good change was broadsides. Man, the points went like almost cut in half from the index. To me, it seems broadsides are, I don't know. I don't want to say auto-include, so I use that word too much, I think, but they're just like, they're great models. If they had fly, they'd be broken. But they have, I think the best loadout would be the 2 high-yield missile pods and 2 smart missile systems and the advanced targeting for the -1 to AP. If I'm getting that in the word, if I'm using the right battle system. It's a lot of shots for not a lot of points. With a decent AP across the table on them. But I've tried the rail rifles. It's called rail rifles? Heavy rail rifles once. And they ain't terrible either, actually. I think I would lean more to the missiles still. But many times these models. Not a whole lot to talk about outside of... I still don't think Riptides are amazing. I think they're a lot of points for what they do. But if you overcharge them... I'm going to avoid the whole Riptide conversation. You can find somebody far more educated on Tau talk about them. I'm just not too sure about them. But I will talk about bodyguards, because I do have some experience. Not bodyguards, crisis suits. I read the crisis suits, and I'm like, I would never bring these. They're way too many points. So they're 50 points for one model with a burst cannon. Now, granted, you can swap it out. You can have up to 3 weapons or support systems, but it's 50 points for one model with a burst cannon. Like, no, it's not. It can deep strike. It can mantis strike. It moves 8. It's toughness 5. It has 3 wounds. It's 3 up save. Too many points. Doesn't make sense. But I tried to make lists using them because I figured if I was going to start Tau, I was going to buy 3 start collecting Tau box sets. That would have like 3 units of 10 fire warriors. It would have 3 units of 3 crisis suits. It'd be a relatively inexpensive way to start Tau. So I want to try to use these crisis suits. The loadout I've tried more than once is a unit of 3 crisis suits. Sorry, 2 units of 3 crisis suits with 3 plasma rifles per crisis suit. And I tried them with gun drones, but I would buy them all marker drones. Then a 3rd unit of 5 missile pods. So it would be 1 guy with 2 missile pods and the advanced targeting for the additional -1 AP. I'm going to make sure I'm calling it the right one. I'm pretty sure it's advanced targeting. I just want to call it the wrong thing. Support system, advanced targeting. Yeah, advanced targeting. Okay, I got it right. So, I said 1. 2 guys with 2 2 missile pods and advanced targeting. 1 with 1 missile pod, advanced targeting, and a drone controller. That's the most expensive of the 3 units, but I find you keep them all in reserve. I've had them all drop down as a group with fusion commanders. So you have all those wounds and all those drones in one big square brick. And you just start picking your targets. You start with the fusion. The fusion targets the important targets, like usually the vehicle you're next to. But you start with the plasma rifles, and you move your way back to the missile pods, which have decent range. The firepower is so good, and I see they have to be as expensive as they are, because once anybody tried to charge them, with a Tau Sept, they're killing way too much in response. They're super survivable, and the drone system is really good at keeping them alive from shooting. You hit bolt guns, and you try to keep bolt. You roll your bolt gun saves on the suits. Maybe they go on a drone. But the las cannons and the melta guns and the supercharged plasma guns, you send them off to drones. You kill your marker drones on drone. So they come down in a big group and you get work done, and then you start killing off your marker drones as fast as you can, because it's 8th edition. If you need marker drones on turn 4, the game, like, it's probably not going your way. Like, most work gets done in the first couple of turns. It is an Alpha Strike game or a Alpha Strike response game. So you deep strike, you do your work, and then you hopefully draw enough firepower from that brick onto that brick that they're not targeting your other things. Maybe in my opinion, you brought broadsides with missiles, maybe some fire warriors or hammerheads, but broadsides and missiles. And it just soaks up a large amount of firepower if you're smart about when to send it off to a drone and when not to. So my opinion on the crisis suits, like I said, I told you it was going to be 180. I said they're way too expensive. I would never bring them. I tried them only because they're in the Start Collecting Tau set, and I think I would have them. They're, like, for me, they are going to be on my list every time. I like the suits a lot. I know a lot of Tau players are still saying they're too expensive. I think they are appropriately costed for what they do. Weapon skill, ballistic skill 4, sure. If you're going up against a -1 hit army, you got a problem. If you're not, they're perfectly fine. So if we ignore the -1 hit army problem, they're perfectly fine. And now you say, Steve, you can't ignore those armies. Well, it's a mistake that we can't fix at the moment. So we can't call every army crap after the fact, because those particular craft worlds or chapter tactics or forge worlds exist. So, not overpowered. You can now play them and not be that guy, and that to me is exciting. That to me is awesome. That opens the door for Tau for me. So if I had time to paint some up, three start collecting box sets. Could do a good starter army. That's awesome. So, all good. You did the right thing. You made them more accessible, Games Workshop. I could play them and not be that guy, because I was that guy for a long time with Necrons and Eldar. I didn't know, everybody. I didn't know. Alright, so I'm going to go and make the Dark Eldar first impressions type book review right now. But it's already up, and maybe you came from that video first. Thanks for watching, everybody. Happy wargaming.